Hello. Today I'm going to talk about the latest addition to the Jackrabbit modulus framework. Before I announce it though, first I'm going to apologize to my Asian subscribers and followers, because I know I am going to mangle the pronunciation horribly. With that being said, I'm going to discuss Jackrabbit's new Ichimoku Cloud module. I separated this out completely from the Predicator and gave it significantly more capability and advantages. Now the Predicator is located into the main Jackrabbit module, and it could be considered a baby version of what the full-blown Ichimoku Cloud is capable of. So, onwards and upwards, and let's get started. This is a complex yet simplistic module in many ways. It has a large wealth of information that can sometimes be very much overwhelming. But from the basis of beginners and experts alike, it is an incredible tool. If I was to rate this tool, I would call it a winter to glacial style system. It is quite elaborate, as you can see. There is a lot going on here. So in order to separate all of these lines, we're actually going to go into the settings menu. Go into the styles. Let's start by just turning off everything. And as you can see, there is a lot here. So, the plot. And I'm even going to turn this off right now. The plot is simply price action. Let's make sure this is merged up properly. There we go. So that's just price action. The candlesticks. So now, as you can see, it fits with the candlesticks perfectly. So, the Kaiku span. This is the price action pushed back by the normal displacement, which defaults to 26 periods. The Kaiku's really Senku B span and Senku A span each, and then of course the Tenkan and Kujin. But that's getting a little ahead, so let's go and look at each of these. So this is the Kaiku span. Now let's look at the Tenkan span. And some of these get pushed ahead as well. The Kijun span. These are basically fast and slow lines, or as some people like to call them, the base and conversion lines. So now when you look at them together, and let's zoom this up a little bit, you get a large amount of information here. Basically a fast and slow line. And it can be quite difficult to keep them separate. But this is in essence, and this is a very loose definition, a kind of a crossover effect. Because you can see here, here's a crossover, and if you follow it over here, you'll see a cross under. So now let's look at the Senku A, Senku B. These create kind of a cloud effect. So that when Senku A is below Senku B, you get a buy process. When Senku B is below Senku A, you get a sell process. But only if a certain criteria is met. And that is the difficult part, which is what makes this so wonderful for a indicator and a module. Because you basically have momentum, volume, and a filtration system completely built into it. So now we see all of it together, and the buying rules are very simple. Let's find a buying position, and then we will discuss the buying. Now, I chose to follow the very specific details of the algorithm itself as it was originally designed. A lot of people don't, and that gets them in trouble. And it makes it difficult to really use this algorithm if the rules aren't followed very carefully. So in looking at the lines, the rules for buying are the closing price, not the candle but just the price, must be above the Senku A or Senku B combination, or what is commonly called Ichimoku Cloud. Commonly called Ichimoku Cloud. We're going to keep it very simple. The combination of Senku A and Senku B creates a cloud effect. The price must be above that. And as you can see, let's filter out all of the noise. Okay, let's get what we can see. Okay, there's the buy signal. Let's take out everything else but Senku A and Senku B. So as you can see, here's the buy signal. Senku A is the green line. Senku B is the red line. This will be the cloud between these two. So there we are. Nice and simple. So that is the area we want to be above. Now, on top of being above this area, both of these lines, you have to be above the Kijun line, or the fast line. And the price is above that line. You also have to be above the Tenkan line. Okay, now we've got them both together, Kijun and Tenkan. And I think I got that backwards. Tenkan's the fast line, Kijun's the slow line. So as you can see, the price is above both. And there has to be a cross under, which you see took place right here. And there's one more rule that you have to follow. The price has to be below the Kaiku span. There are 6 different rules that must be followed before a purchase can take place. Now that sounds very complicated. And for your first time with working with this, it is very complicated. But it does make sense as you study it. And I do encourage you to study this indicator carefully, and there are a wide variety of resources available. This indicator is both complex and simplistic, and by itself a very powerful tool. Now, of course, this is Jackrabbit, which means it wouldn't be complete unless it had an equally powerful aggressive mode. And it can be very aggressive, as you can see. But we're not going to go into the advanced parts of it. We're just going to keep this video simple. Now, these are the default values that many people say you should not mess with too much. So for the purposes of this introduction video, I'm not going to go into the links very much. Just that you should read a lot of material on this indicator to really take advantage of it. A second look video will be a more in-depth look at each of these items. But for now, the purpose is just the introduction and to demonstrate how to use it and take advantage of its rich and wonderful capabilities. And the one thing I always love to pair with this module is my split channel momentum. The combination just does wonders, as we are going to demonstrate. So first we're going to use the IOI source. We're going to link it to Ichimoku. We're going to show the chart. We're going to get rid of the signal line. By now, you should be used to my standard momentum practices. And you will find this to be a very resilient algorithm and recipe. Okay, and now let's set everything up for the momentum. And we can't forget one of the most important parts. There. Now it's important to remember that the combination filters out weak signals. So we may need to move to a higher time frame to find some examples. And here is a good example of a buy signal that matches up. Then of course you see a sell signal, but it doesn't match. Actually, no, it does match up here. So the next component to this recipe is just a very simple DCA. It does well, it does wonders. And if I can find it, yeah, here we go. So let's hook this up to the moving averages. Get rid of the signal line. And set this up for my favorite recipe. There you are. Sweet, simple, and to the point. And that's with DCA take profit. Let's see how that looks in strategy mode. Okay, here we go. And you'll notice, I think I put this in the wrong direction actually. I did. Make sure your direction is right. Very important. Make sure your direction is right. You'll notice it only has a very limited number of buys. So as you can see, only one buy. This is a deep winter or glacial strategy. Remember, all 6 rules must line up before it makes a purchase. So coins that don't have a good quality to them don't do well, or they're very slow. It doesn't just buy into the market on the basis of a poor quality coin. Here's an example. Only 2 purchases. So in 208 days, only 2 purchases. This is the kind of strategy that is very long-term. You could easily use $1,000 per position, walk away, take a vacation, come back, and feel good that it's going to be relatively safe. It isn't a typical approach, and that's why so many experts and beginners like it. It has everything wrapped up into one neat little ball that can make an incredibly good combination of results. It doesn't worry about a lot of the details, and that is important. Now, if you have an aggressive trailing stop loss that arms at 2% and retraces at 1% from your trading platform, you can get some pretty insane profits. This is not necessarily a short-term process, even though you can use short-term time frames. For example, only 2, and it's well above the profit margin. You could easily take a manual sell here or use your platform trailing stop loss and get out of this quite happily. This just lends itself to an incredibly dynamic possibility of profits. And that is what is important. In fact, I have one set up already that I'm going to switch to, where I demonstrate this in 2 different combinations. The Ichimoku Cloud with the momentum. On this side, I have a dollar cost averaging. On this side, I have a stop loss. And it does lend itself well to the stop loss. Here it breaks even, but that means it makes its risk-reward ratio. So that is something to be aware of, that this does work very well in a wide range of circumstances and conditions. The advantage of dollar cost averaging is that it has minimal impact on your budget. and you could do extremely well with it in a very short amount of time with a very long-term prospect. Meaning, this is a 3.5-day cycle, and yet look at where it sits for the profits, just waiting for you to pick them off the tree, so to speak. Here is a single purchase system which the Ichimoku can do very well. The momentum filters out the weak spots, meaning you get a very good and dynamic possibility for your situations. Let me make sure I turn off the signal line. There we go. So as you can see, 4 wins. Let's see if we can find a win. Now, when using a stop loss, remember that you're only using one position size. So if you have a $1,000 budget, you could easily trade 80 different coins. I personally would only recommend trading 50 or half of your budget. That way you can take incurring losses back to back and not worry about being overextended. And that will happen sometimes in an aggressive market, like Black Thursday. But this kind of a situation with the Ichimoku can really help mitigate that and give you a very unique perspective on your choices. Ichimoku works great with the stop loss. It also works great with dollar cost averaging. I prefer dollar cost averaging. But I also prefer a limited exposure. And this does just that. It gives me a limited exposure with very limited purchases. It is an incredible combination, and I heavily recommend it, especially if you have a small budget and you want to get the most out of it. This really is an incredible way of taking $100 and really stretching it to the limits. If you want to try your hand at more than one coin on $100, you can easily trade 7 different coins comfortably. You do need to pay attention to multiple losses, but it can be done. Take a look at this, and I will post a link to this chart along with this video. So make sure to take a look at it, see how it does, test it, run it in a paper trader, and really take advantage of what this module has to offer, because it can take your trading to the next level if you want a defensive protection barrier against the market. If you're not sure where to start on a market, then this side is really a good way to give you a good stepping stone into just about any coin whatsoever that really doesn't have that great of a dynamic. That's what makes this coin process so great. This trading recipe can be used for a lot of difficult coins, including one of my favorites that is an absolute nightmare. XRP is difficult and brutal to deal with, but even at its worst, as you can see, if you run a stop loss, it comes away sitting pretty with 3 wins. If you run a dollar cost averaging, your highest exposure is only going to be your position size by 2. In my case, $22. That is an exceptional risk-reward combination for a coin that often gives people heartburn and nightmares. Take a look at it, study it, watch it, really spend time going through Stockpedia and Investopedia on what Ichimoku can offer. It is worth learning. Until next time.